JAX-RS, it stands for Java API for RESTful services. Okay, so these are Java standard for developing RESTful services over Java EE platform and Java SE platform as well. So these are the topics we are going to cover. So we are going to go over JAX-RS a bit, and then we are going to see how we can create resources. So in RESTful web services, everything is a resource, and that resource, every resource, and then has URI, right? So on the server side, we need to have a way of representing these resources, and that is basically this add path annotation. And we are going to see how URI path template could be used. So path param, query param, form param, and header param. So these are the ways of capturing what's coming from the client. Okay, and then we are going to learn how you can assign a particular method of your resource to handle a particular HTTP method. So these are the annotations that you are going to be able to use on your server-side code to indicate, yeah, this method is supposed to handle GET request, this method is supposed to handle POST request, and things like that. And creating responses. So the in RESTful Services Convention, it's important for the response to include information about on the server side. Like if you create a brand new item, then server should actually respond with a response message indicating the URI of the newly created item. So creating response is actually important. So JAX-RS provides some utility classes for creating responses. Okay. Then we're going to actually talk about the representations, formats, meaning what format or the representations you can handle or you are going to be able to produce. Okay, so here produces and consumes annotations are used to specify what format it can consume and produce. Okay, all right. So we are going to actually spend rest of the presentation understanding all these annotations. Okay, so JAX-RS quick overview. So if you want to develop RESTful based web services, you could do that using just a servlet code. Okay, in order to do that, you have to write a lot of code like this. Okay, so this is certainly not desirable. Okay, so I mean the point of this slide is that you have to write too much code if you want to support RESTful request in your vanilla servlet API. So we need something better. So that's the reason JAX-RS was born. So it's Java API for RESTful web services. So it should be designed to support RESTful concepts such as everything is a resource, and every resource is addressable via URI, and then HTTP methods provide uniform interface. Again, these are the way client communicate with the server. Okay, and it also has to support various representations or formats. Okay, so these are RESTful concepts, and JAX-RS should address all these RESTful services concept. Okay, and it should support high-level and declarative programming. What it means is that as a developer, I should be able to expose my RESTful services by using annotation. Just like we do expose our service as a SOAP-based web services using annotation, we want to do the same thing for RESTful-based web services, right? Okay, so in SOAP-based web services, the only thing we have to do to expose our POSIX as a web service, SOAP-based web service endpoint, is using @web service annotation at the class level, and then boom, you got the SOAP-based web services, right? Same deal for RESTful-based web services. We won't be able to use very simple annotation to expose our POSIX class as RESTful-based web services. And generate or hide boilerplate code. So we want to be, so basically this is the same thing as this. So by being able to use annotation will generate all the boilerplate code for you, so you as a developer don't have to write those boilerplate code. Okay, so implementations of JAX-RS. So JAX-RS is a standard, okay, meaning it just defines an APIs in the form of annotation. So there are multiple implementations. The Jersey is implementation from the Glassfish, and it's actually reference implementations of JAX-RS, and that's what we are going to use. It comes with the Glassfish, okay? But there are other open source implementations of JAX-RS, Apache CXF and JBoss REST Easy and RESTlet. So you can use these implementations underneath. Okay, so if you're writing JAX-RS application, that application should be deployable over different platforms such as JBoss, okay, which is using REST Easy implementation. Okay. Alright, development tools. So you can use IDEs, all IDEs, major IDEs support RESTful basis support, RESTful basis development, including NetBeans, Eclipse, IntelliJ IDEA. Okay, so you can use IDEs for development of server as well as even for client. Okay. As for client tools, you can use multiple client tools. Of course, you can use a browser. Okay. Browser can certainly send HTTP request, but there are other tools, REST clients. So this is the one that we are going to use. On the Firefox you have a poster, and the Chrome has other plugins as well, and the CRUD is a command line tools for sending the HTTP request. So we are going to play around with this one as well. And SOAP UI is another tool that we have learned a couple of days ago, which can send the HTTP request. Okay, so we are going to play around with this REST client, which is a standalone application, and curl, and also browser. Okay, so let's do exercise 0. Exercise 0 is basically installation of these REST tools. Okay, so let's go to the lab documentation. So we are going to install two tools. One is curl, and the other one is REST client. If you're using Mac, you probably have curl already. So try to type curl and see whether it responds. Okay. So in my case, I have already installed. So if I type curl, and I have this one in my path, so so it's not there. So I should actually go to. So once you download it, so basically you can install it. And where is my call? Yeah, so I'm gonna just I think I have to actually download. So download. Yeah, so here you go. So I can just type call here. Okay, I should have this one in my path. Alright, so download the call and just type call and see whether it responds with the help screen like this. Okay, and another one we want to play around with is REST client. So this is a standalone application. So you go to this link, and you can just download REST client UI jar with the dependencies jar. So download this guy, and for this is for Mac. Okay, so download REST client. And then when you run it, so you're gonna actually run it with like Java command like this. Oops. Let me just copy this one more time. Oh, looks like I have to go to download. REST client. Here we go. So these are the job files. Now I should be able to run it. Oops. And is a standalone Java application. Again, you can actually send HTTP. This is URL, and then you can select the HTTP method. Okay, so these are the two tools I want you to download and install. So I'm going to give you guys. The one thing that you might want to make sure is that set the options and make sure that auto indent response body. Otherwise, it's not going to be indented, meaning it's going to be one single line. So make sure that this flag is this is actually checked, so that you are going to see indented responses. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys about 5 minutes to install this one. Okay, so let's move on to add path annotation. So this is the way that you are going to specify to create a resource. Okay, so how to create a root resource class. So you are going to create a root resource class using add path annotation on your Pojo class. Okay, basically the base URI is the application context, after application context you are going to have a root resource with this path annotated class, and then you are going to specify these get, put, post, and delete annotations on your method. So that's the way you are going to indicate that this method will handle get request on this path specified and put request on this path and things like that. So let's see an example. So this picture, this slide shows examples. Okay, so let's say I'm trying to create the resource whose address is like a widget. This is the path from the application context. So this is for the when there is a HTTP GET request of this is so catalog is the application context. You know, by application context, I'm talking about just name of the application. And right after that, if you see widgets, then there has to be some resource that can handle this URL path. So because we have this with a path and widget, so this class, one of the method in this class should handle this guy. Okay. Now, we have two methods inside this widget resources class. So you can tell this guy get list has a get method. Okay, so any method that doesn't have its own path should handle that particular path of the class. So this get list method is going to handle this request. However, if the URL is /widgets and /some number like n, okay, then there has to be another method that can take this n. Okay, so in this case we have another path here. Okay, so we can actually talk about this one as in this format as a template later on. So in this case, this method will be handled by this guy, this method. Okay, so the key point I want you to remember is that you are going to use path to specify the root resource at the class level, and then whatever path you specify on the method level will be concatenated with the class level, the path. So it's going to be concatenated with widget / and this. Okay, so whatever value that is provided, like a n, like a 3, will be captured as ID in this case as 3. Okay, all right. Let me see whether you guys have any questions. So let me move on. Yeah, if you're having some issues with the call, I mean, you know, we're gonna just use the REST client. Okay, it's not really important which tool you use. What's important is to understand the concept. So as long as you have one tool is used, you know, working, either REST client and call, that's good enough. Okay, all right. So that is we're gonna actually do exercise 1. Okay. All right, so let's actually take a look at the exercise 1. Okay, so exercise 1, we are going to build the Hello World RESTful Maven project step by step. You can use either NetBeans or Eclipse. So it's actually so this is actually importing it. So we're not actually writing things step by step, but it's pretty straightforward. It's actually a web application. So let's actually try to run this application, see how it works out. Okay. Again, you can actually use NetBeans or the Glassfish. Okay, so this one should be changed to Glassfish version 4. Okay, so I'm actually using the Eclipse. So I'm going to import the Maven project, existing Maven project. Make sure you guys downloaded the lab file. I actually made the modification just 30 minutes before our code camp today, so I made changes on 8:30. So if you have downloaded hands-on lab before 8:30, please re-download them. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna actually go to my labs. And here, and go to JAX-RS Basics 1 and samples Maven. So I'm going to import all those apps. Okay, and finish. Alright, so we are talking about Hello World application. Okay, so here we are going to first, let's try to build it first. Okay, so it created a WAR file, and then we are going to run it. Okay, here I'm going to run it over Glassfish. Okay, for those of you who have not installed Glassfish 4.0 on your Eclipse, you have to install it first. Okay, so I'm going to actually show you how to install it after I run this guy. Okay, so I'm going to select the Glassfish, and then right now it's starting Glassfish, and then it will display something like this. Okay, so here if I click this one, it will display hello world message. Okay, and you can see when I click it, it goes to /resources and /hello world. Okay, and so if you take a look at the pom.xml file, we just have dependencies on the Jersey. Okay. And if you take a look at the index.jsp page that gets displayed in the beginning, you can see it actually goes to resources /hello world. Okay, so that's how we actually get to resources hello world. So when we actually get to that URL, what happens is that by the way, in the web.xml file, this is how things configured. You are going to use the servlet class and then resources. Okay, so this is already done. So basically, if you are writing this code step by step, you're gonna just build the web application with web.xml file with this. Okay, and then so this is the web.xml file. Okay, now if you take a look at the hello world resource Java file, okay, that's where our annotations are used. So you can see we have root resource here with the path, the hello world annotation. Then we have two methods. One is getXML, and the other one is a putXML. Since we are doing a get, okay, it's going to use this method. Okay, and it also, we're going to talk about the produces later on. Okay, so it's basically producing HTML format. So this is what gets returned. Okay, so that's the reason you say hello world. So if you want to change this one, it will actually display different things. And yeah, you can just change to whatever country of your choice, and then if you refresh the page, then it will display the changed value. So here we are going to actually see the RESTful web service annotation Java documentation. Then you have to you have to actually resolve the dependencies. So just type this one at the command line. Okay, and then you should be able to do context. Well, actually, you don't have to do at the command line. You can actually just right click it. So you can go to dependencies, Maven dependencies, and then Jersey server or Jersey core, and then you can say the Maven and download the Java doc. So that should work as well. Okay, and then you should be able to just right click and show Java doc, and then oh, I'm sorry, this is the case in NetBeans, right? Okay, in Eclipse, you can just say Shift F2 key to get the Java documentation of the path. So you're going to see the path annotation here. And so on the 4, you're going to add another class. So here we are going to add another class called my own resource, and the package is hello world. And basically you're going to just copy the code and provide a different URL with a different class name, of course. And here you say my own word. Okay, all right, and then you're going to deploy it again. Okay, then you are going to be able to test by specifying my own world, and then you should actually display this message. Okay, on the 5, you're going to use okay, so this is still building. Looks like oops. Why is that? Let me make sure the server is glassfish. Okay, let me just remove these 2 guys. And let's try one more time. Okay, it works. So I say resource hello world, and then you can see it's changing, it's displaying hello world from the get message. So if I want to change the message from here, instead of hello world, I'm gonna say hello Boston, right? Hello JPassion. So here I go to this method, hello jpassion.com, save the change, and if I refresh, and looks like I have to rebuild it in that case, and I'm gonna actually run as again. Click it. Now it says jpassion.com. Okay, so that is the and then 1.5 we are going to use the REST client. I should say REST client here instead of Firefox Poster, and you specify URL. So in this case it's going to be this URL. Oops, just lost it. This guy. I'm gonna actually say, and the REST client. Where is the REST client in my case? So I'm gonna go to download REST, and I should actually have the jar file. Do I have a start REST? Okay, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to use REST client, and I'm gonna specify right here, and the get is get. So I'm going to I'm going to run it. And you can see it should actually come back with a response message of hello jpassion.com, okay, as expected. And the same thing with the call. So here I'm gonna just say I'm gonna just type this call on okay, so I have a Java tools. Okay, and I'm going to type this one, and again it returns hello jpassion.com. If you want to set the acceptable format in call, this is how you do it. You know, basically you are going to use H, and then you can change the headers. In this case, I'm changing header with HTML. So if I do this, this should work okay, because you know, the response format is HTML. Okay, so that works fine. But if I say I want to receive in XML, then it will fail. Okay, because the server cannot handle the request of XML. Okay, all right. So this is what you should get. Okay, not acceptable. You're going to see not acceptable. Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to give you guys about the 15 minutes. Actually, I'm going to give you 17 minutes to play around the exercise 1. Okay. All right. Now, the next topic is URI, path template. So here we are going to learn path param, query param, and form param, and header param. So it's basically capturing the data that was sent from the client. So we have already seen example of path param. So when the URI path templates are URIs with a variable embedded, so the URI path template means it's the URI with the variables embedded. That's what the path template is all about. And the variable will capture client request value. So when there is a request coming from the client with this URL, so here http example.com/users, and then at the end it has a name. Okay, so it could be sanction, it could be XYZ, and what you want to do is you want to capture this value as a variable. So in that case, you are going to use this URI path template notation. So basically, you are going to use this brace, and username is a variable. So this variable will capture this sanction. Okay, so the one after users. Okay, now in order to use the username value in your method, okay, you have to capture that username using path param annotation. So this is basically indicating whatever variable value that was captured in the path, I want to receive it as this username. So this username doesn't have to be the same as user this guy. You can actually have this one like a X. That's your argument name, right? However, the path param, this username has to be the same as this one. So what you're saying is that I want to get the variable value of this username of this guy. These two should be the same. And I want to actually assign it to my argument, in this case username, and then you can use username variable as an argument in your code. Okay, so this is an example of URI path template. Now there is also what is called the query param. So path param is capturing the from the request URI like this, like a /123 or /sanction. However, if the user sent the request parameter in the form of like this, question mark and then start equals 0, then what you want to do is you want to capture the value of this 0 or 1 or 3 or whatever, right? That's when you are going to use query param. So let's take a look at examples of path param and query param one more time. Yeah, we have already seen examples of path param. Okay, so we're going to see example one more time, and we are going to see example of query param in the following slide. So this is an example where path param and query param is being used. So if the URL, so first of all, this is the path item. So this is the root resource, okay? And then this is going to be concatenated, okay? And in the method level. So method level path will be concatenated with this guy. So as you can see, this is also actually using the template, right? So in the variable format, okay? So this method, get item resource, should be able to handle the URI coming from the client, host catalog /item, this is the root resource, and /123. So again, if you want to capture this ID value as an argument, then you have to use path param, okay? And you have to give the name of that variable ID here. And then you're going to capture that as a long type of ID. Again, this one you could actually name it in any way you want. It could be XYZ. Now, what's interesting is that you can specify here the type. So the type conversion will be performed by the JAX-RS implementation. Okay. So if you say int, it will convert this guy into int. If you say long, it will convert into long. If you say string, then it will convert it into string. Okay. All right. Well, actually, it is a string. So, at that point, if you say string, then there is no conversion needed. But what's important is that you can actually receive, in type you want it. Type you want. Okay. Anyway, so that is the path param. Now, if the URL comes in the form of like this, okay, a question mark and start equals some number, then if you want to capture this value, then you are going to use query param. And then you provide the name of the request parameter, start, and then this value 0 will be captured as, in this case, start. Again, this is just argument name, so you can name it in XYZ or ABC, whatever. Again, the type will be converted into the type you specify here. In this case, int type. Okay. Now, this URI path template variable could be done with regular expression. Okay, so here what I said was, when there is a users and then there is something, that something will be captured as a username variable, and that username variable has to be in this regular expression format. Okay, so what it means is that username has to be begin with one upper or lowercase letter and 0 or more alphanumeric characters and the underscore characters. Okay, if the username coming from the client does not match this regular expression, then it is a 4.4 error. There is no method that can handle it, which means there is no resource that can handle it, which means client will receive 4.4 error. Okay, all right. Form param. So we actually learned how to use the path param and query param. So these are most popular. Param, the annotations that you can use to capture what user has sent. Okay. There is another popular one that could be actually used to capture the form parameters. Okay. So if the user has entered fields, entered some values into form fields, you can capture those fields in the form of form param. Okay, so it binds values of a form parameter contained within a request entity body to resource method parameter. So in this case, if there was a name field in a form, then you can capture as name here. Okay, so you're going to actually capture the name field of form, and you are going to receive it in this case as a string type of name. If there is an age form field, you want to capture that and you want to actually receive it as an int age argument. And then you can actually use this name and age in your code. In this case, we are just displaying things out. Okay. And in this case, we create a string and then we're going to actually see, this is the way that you are going to create the response message. Okay. So we just send this message back in the response. That is form param. And you can also capture header values. Okay, so if you want to actually see, if you want to capture header values, then you're going to use header param. So in this case, what I want to capture is I want to capture the values except the HTTP header, and I want to capture that as accept string. And here again, I'm just using it in any way I want. Okay. All right, so let's do exercise 2. So let's take a look at exercise 2. So here we have 5 the labs: form param, header param, path param, and path param regular expression, and query param. So these are basically reflecting the code that we have seen. So let's try path param first. So you're going to run hello world path param. Okay, so let's run hello world path param, this guy. So run as and install, and then let's run this guy on Glassfish. Okay, so whenever you have this problem, I think I actually solved this one in the hands-on lab, but if you see that problem, just go to the servers and just remove it. Okay. Okay, so that's what we get. So here, when we click resources user sanction, then you're going to see username is sanction. Okay, and code here is that we are receiving that username, okay, as a variable. So basically, we are capturing this is the root path, root resource, and anything after users will be captured as a username variable. So we are receiving username here, and all we do is just get it and just send it. Username is sanction in this case. 2.2 is regular expressions. If you run it, then you're going to see sanction and to sanction. So this one should work fine. Okay. However, if you click this guy, it will fail because you will see 4, because this is regular expression. Regular expression says that the first character cannot be a number, right? Okay. And query param is, in this case, we are actually getting username equals John Mist, and we are going to receive it, John Mist, and again, we are going to just capture John Mist as username. So this is the case that we are using query param, right? And the next one is form param. So here we have a form, name and age, okay? And we are going to receive it as form param name and age, and we just display the value. Header param is, in this case, we are going to receive we are going to just display the accept header. So this is what you get. This is actually what accept header has, right? And that's basically, we just kind of display accept header, and that's what you get, okay? Let's see, I'm gonna just next topic is HTTP method annotations. So we have already seen examples on how these methods are being used, especially the get, right? Okay, so let's see how each of these methods, how each of these annotations are used with methods. So annotation resource class methods. Methods in the resource classes are annotated with get, put, post, and delete. And as you have guessed, the method annotated with each of these annotation will handle get method, put method, and post method, and delete method. So uniform interface methods on resources. So whenever we say REST provides uniform interface, that means the set of the HTTP method, those 4 methods: HTTP get, post, delete, and put, plus URI. That's pretty much all the interfaces that are needed. So that is uniform interface we are talking about. So in this case, we have employees class, and it does have with the root path here. So it will handle anything that with employees. And then we have get annotated with get method, and post annotated with create method. Okay. And this is the case that we have employees, and you could have the variable, and then we have 3 methods: get, update, and delete. Now the names of these methods does not matter, okay, even though you could actually be as reflecting what it does, but the name of these methods could be just anything you want. It could be ABC, XYZ, whatever you want, as long as the annotation, this get, put, delete, and put annotations are on that particular method. That method will deal with HTTP get request, HTTP put request, HTTP delete request. Okay, so this is the same picture that we talked about before, right? So again, just to go over one more time, so combination of HTTP method and resource URI will actually dictate what operation you are going to perform. Okay, so CRUD operation you're talking about is create, read, multiple, read single, update, and delete. So let's see an example of this. Suppose we have a resource. So this is the custom order management example here. So we have a resource that can handle get, put, post, and delete. Now this is the real example. So suppose we got slash orders, and then if HTTP method is get, then what you are asking for is list all orders. If you are using put, then it's actually unused. If you use post, then adding a new order. Delete is unused. Now, if you have the orders and slash number, that is entry. That is entry URI, right? Okay. And this one is a collection URI. Okay. In that case, get is get order details. Put is update order, and post is add an item, and delete is cancel order. And then you have a customers, and the same thing, customer slash ID. So this is the collection URI, and this is the entry URI. Now you can combine these two. You can say slash customers, and then this is an ID of the customer, and then slash orders. What it means is that if this URI is used with get, then what you're saying is I'd like to get all orders of customer ID X. Okay, and put is unused, and post is add an order to this particular customer's orders. and delete is cancel all custom orders. So you can actually combine the resources like this. Okay. All right, so this is a little bit of repeat. Okay, so the orders is get list orders and post is submit all order, and so since everything else is actually something I already actually covered, let me actually cover this aspect. Okay, I think one of the questions that was asked when we actually talk about the RESTful services overview. Can we handle like a multiple records, or can we handle some kind of business logic? Things we have done so far is actually handling CRUD-based operations, create, read, update, and delete, and operations. And most of the applications can be, in fact, written in the form of CRUD-based operations. However, there could be some business logic that you want to expose, and that is not really CRUD-based operation. In that case, all you have to do is to provide, some kind of URL, okay, and in a method that can receive this URL, you can do anything you want. So in this case, if you want to compute the average value of the sales, an average sale or something like that, you can certainly provide a method that can handle this average sale URL. And then you will just return the computation of the average. Okay, so by using HTTP method, you can actually handle the CRUD-based operations, but also the some business logic as well. Okay, I just got the message that. So key point here is that you can even actually handle business logic request. Okay. Okay, so moving forward, representations, and here we are going to talk about produces and consumes. Okay. So this is the same slide that we have seen before. So here I like to get the listing of all the recordings. Okay, and then what gets returned is XML format. The reason is because the user has asked for the response format is supposed to be in XML. So, in accept header, it says, I want to receive the response in XML format. So that's the reason RESTful service will return the response in the form of XML. If this one says application/JSON, then this is going to be JSON format. Okay. So resources can have multiple representations. And so in the form of the way that this representation or formats are being communicated between HTTP client and server is that client will set the accept HTTP request header indicating its desired response format. And then response header will set content type indicating what type is sending. Okay. And in HTTP there are bunch of formats that are being supported. Text/HTML is regular web page, and application/XHTML and XML is an XML. RS plus XML is RSS feed. This is Octastream and RDF. I mean, there are a lot. Okay, this is actually same in a MIME type that you see in the email. These are all supported, but mostly we are going to deal with mostly XML and JSON. Okay, so produces annotation. So this produces annotation is used to specify this MIME media type of representations a resource can produce and send back to the client. Okay, so this is used by the server, meaning the resource, to indicate what it can produce. Okay, you can specify it produces at the class level and method level. Okay. If you specify at the class level, then it gets applied to every single method. If you specify at the method level, that will override the class level produces. So let's see examples of this. So in this case, we have some resource, and this is the root path. Okay, and then it says produces at the class level. What it means is that every single method, in this case, we have a two method, right? Do get as plain text, do get as HTML. Every method by default will be applied with this. Okay, All right, so in this case, it doesn't have its own produces. So what it means is that it will take this guy, produces. What it means is that it will generate text plain MIME type. Okay, so it will generate text plain. Now this guy get as HTML has its own produces. So this will override this guy. So this will be applied because it is method level. So in this case, this method will generate text HTML MIME type. Okay. Moving forward. So the choice of MIME type based on client preferences. So if resource class is capable of producing more than one MIME type, so in our cases it will generate just single MIME type, but you can actually specify multiple, as you are going to see example of that in a few minutes. So resource can produce more than one MIME type, then resource method chosen will produce the most acceptable media type as declared by the client. So the resource should actually generate the MIME type that is requested. For example, that request is coming from, again, accept header or actually extension of the URI, right? So, let's actually assume accept header is set like this. Accept header says text plain, okay? Then, in our example, which method is going to be used is based on what it can produce. So if the client says, I want text plain as the accept header like this, in this case, do get as plain text method will be invoked. Between these two methods, this will be used because that's what, this is the method that can generate what is requested from the client, which is the text plain. Now, client can actually specify multiple the options and even with some weight. So in this case, what it means is this. I can take both plain and HTML, but I like to have a preference of this guy because I have a weight of 0.9. So I want to actually have 90% of preference of this, but this one I want to have 100% of preference. So if there is a method that can handle the generation of HTML format, then that method will be used. Otherwise, it will use a method that can handle generation of the plain. So in our case, since we do have get as HTML method, okay, which can handle the generation or producing of HTML, this method will be used. If there is no method, if this method was not present, then this will be used because that is still something that it can handle. It can, it can take, but with a 0.9 preference versus 1.0 preference of this. Okay, so even at produces, you can specify multiple type. So here, this method can handle the generation or producing either XML or JSON. Okay, so if the client asks for either of this with an equal preference, then the first one will be chosen. Okay, if the client has more preferences to JSON, then JSON will be generated. Okay. Okay, so that is produces. Now, what about consumes? Okay, so consumes specify the MIME media type of representation a resource can consume. Okay, so again, just like a produces, it can be applied at the class level and method level. And if you specify at the method level, that will override the class level. So when you say consumes, that means the resource can actually consume only that particular format. Okay, so container is responsible for ensuring the method invoked is capable of consuming the media type of HTTP request entity body. If no such method is available, the container must respond with 415 unsupported media type. Okay, so let's see an example of that. So what this says is consumes text plain. What it means that this method can take only the data in this format. Okay, the plain format. If the request contains like an XML format, then this guy cannot handle it. then if there is no method that can handle text XML or text JSON, then the client will receive 1, 4, and 5 unsupported media type. Okay, so consumes indicating what a method can consume, what it can take, and produces annotation indicates what MIME type it can produce. Okay, all right, so that's produces and consumes. So let's take a look at exercise 3. So here we are dealing with produces and also consumes as well. So in our case, let's do hello world produces simple. So in this case, it's actually, I'm going to explain it and I'm going to actually do it. It will just display it looks like this is a content from accept header. Okay, so this accept header says that it can handle, it can receive it in the form of HTML, XHTML and XML, and XML, and XML is the 0.9. Everything else is like a 0.8, right? Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. These are all 1.0. Sorry about that. But this one, XML is 0.9. Everything else is 0.8. Okay. So in this case, if you take a look at the code, we see hello world. So it's actually producing plain, and it can produce XHTML. So this is, the same code that we have seen on the slide. So when the client asks for the plain, this will be used. When client asks for the HTML, then this will be used. Okay. So in this case, this one is used, right? So that's the reason it actually display all the accept header. Okay. So let's actually try that. So produces simple. So I'm gonna just produces simple. Hello world. This is what you get. Okay. Okay, the rest of the application works pretty much the same. So this is the case. We are going to get the XML. Okay, so we have a method that can, so here we produces this guy will actually generate XML, and this one same thing, and this one is, so in this case we're actually generating XML. We're going to talk about how we generate XML later on. So these are in fact different ways of creating XML. Okay. So I'm going to talk about this one later on, okay? And this one just consumes, okay? So here is probably using either. Oh, so here is actually, the path is different, okay? So in this case, in this case the path is XML. Yeah, it's probably using the first one, okay? So, but you can actually have two different ways. So you can actually call get XML2. Both of them should work, okay? Again, we're going to talk about how to generate XML, two different means. And this is the user.xml file, and you can see that is the JAX-RS annotations. Okay, so this is how user object is going to be used to create user.xml file. Okay, so this is something we learned yesterday, right? This is for creating a JSON. Okay, and here it produces JSON. Again, there are two different means of creating a JSON. So get JSON and get JSON2, both of them should work. Okay, and here you have to have this one should be 117.1. I have to change that. And 3.4 is produces. Here we are going to actually create the produces. So here, this is generating PDF file, and we are going to actually use the response builder, and then so for now, we just don't worry about too much about this. Just focus on the PDF. So he's actually generating PDF. Okay, and this is creating a PNG format. Okay, so here we say produces image PNG. So you can actually support, pretty much all the MIME types out there. So all right. So right now it's 11:30, and we also didn't have any break this morning. So let's have 15 minutes break, and I'm going to give you 15 minutes the lap time. So we'll be back at 12. Okay. Okay, so the next topic is XML binding via JAX-B. Okay, so before this topic, we had quite a bit of discussions in terms of the XML binding and JSON binding. So it will clarify some issues. Okay, XML binding via JAX-B. So JAX-B is used for any application that has a need of translating XML to Java and vice versa, of course. And also it handles JSON to Java and Java object to JSON as well. So it handles both XML and JSON format. Okay. So here we can specify it can consume XML form data. So if it wants to receive data in the form of XML, you can actually consume like this. And then it can produce XML as a response. Okay. Now, if this is a method with consumes and produces, and it basically produces JAX-B class. So JAX-B class is a generic class that you can use to represent that could be converted into XML. Okay. And in this case is basically converted to a map for accessing form fields. So this is accessing form fields. But key point here is, basically we are talking about generating XML using JAX-B class. But it could be different means. So we're going to actually see a couple more examples besides this for generating XML. So this is the code that produces XML from complex object. So here we produces XML or JSON. You could actually generate XML and JSON. And this is a case that we have what is called the sub-resource, and we haven't talked about sub-resource yet, okay? So sub-resource is, instead of having a method that actually produces right away, you can actually have another resource object. So this is actually creating another resource object, and this is the resource object that actually produces it. Okay, so for now, just consider this one is a sub-resource object, just like any other resource object that generate the resource. Okay, and we're going to talk about the sub-resource in the next presentation. Okay, so if you take a look at customer converter sub-resource, this is the one that actually contains a method, so produces the from XML object. Okay, oh, I'm sorry. I think I actually give you wrong information. So this is not really sub-resource. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. So this has nothing to do with the sub-resource. Okay. So basically, this is the get method that actually produces the customer converter object. And customer converter object is, if you take a look at the customer converter object, it does annotate it with XML root element and XML element and things like that. So remember yesterday, in order to guide the JAX-B to create XML from Java object, you can specify this annotation. So in this case, I want to name the root element as customer. And otherwise, it's going to use customer converter as a default name. And this one, I'm going to create integer for I'm sorry, this one, I'm going to actually have an element called the customer ID as an element. This one, I'm going to have an zip as an XML element from this customer. So XML, XML document that gets generated is going to be something like this. It's going to be customer, and you can see there is a customer ID and zip. Okay, so assuming we have all the other things, we probably have XML element for all the other properties. Okay, so in this case, we set it on the get method, but you can specify on the property level as well. Either one is fine. Okay, so the whole idea of this particular class is with this XML, the JAX-B annotation is to guide JAX-B implementation, JAX-B framework, so that it's guiding JAX-B framework to generate the XML document instance in a way you want, like this. Okay, like a custom name of the root element, custom name of the field, and things like that. Okay. All right, so that is basically what it does. So this is one way of creating the XML. Okay. Another way of creating is in fact the JAX-B, and that's something we're going to talk about later on. Okay, so creating response with response class. So sometimes it's necessary to return additional information in response to a HTTP request, such as and that information will be used by the client to further the user interaction. For example, in RESTful application environment, it's a common convention when you create a new entry, and the URI of the new entry is supposed to be provided in a response, okay, so that the client can actually kind of click the links. So let me actually rephrase the whole RESTful operation characteristic. One of the characteristics that I did not mention in the beginning of the presentation was that in RESTful services, the hyperlink is very important. Okay, so that the way that we actually use the web is, you go to some resource and the resource will actually provide another link, hyperlink, and you click the link and then it will go to another resource and then it will provide another link. So this is the way that we actually use the web, and the same thing with the RESTful web services. So the hyperlink is actually becoming very important. Whenever you create a response, you should actually provide hyperlinks. So this is the reason why JAX-RS provide response classes, so that actually you can create these responses a lot easier. So response building provides other functionalities such as setting the entity tag and last modified date of the representation and things like that. Let me actually, I think, okay, so this is actually, yeah, so I think exercise 4 is actually creating response, and I think this response header is this is actually relevant. So I was thinking maybe we should have left first, but before this presentation, but this is relevant, so we'll continue. Okay, so response building provides other functionalities such as setting the entity tag and last modified date of the representation and things like that. So we'll see examples of that. Okay, so response code, when you actually send back the response, you might want to send the response code like get. If it is successful, you want to set 200. Okay, if it is a put operation, 201 is like a created. Okay, actually this is supposed to be post. Okay, so if you go to this website, you can actually see a bunch of HTTP response code. Okay. Okay, so HTTP response for HTTP post for creating a new resource. So common RESTful pattern for creation of a new resource is to support post response that returns 201 created status code, and the location header should contain the URI of the newly created resource. So this is typical RESTful pattern that you should actually support in your RESTful application. Okay. So this is an example. So here, suppose you create a new item called the dog. Okay, so this is the request. Request says I want to create this new item into this items. So basically I'm using post, and the URI is the collection URI. So I'm trying to add this item to the list of items. Okay, and typical response should be something like this. HTTP should have 201 created. Then in the location header of the response, it should actually point the location, URI location of newly created item of this. Okay, so this is the typical RESTful convention you should follow. This is not mandatory, but this is the convention you should follow. Okay, so that client can actually click this link, so that client can actually see the detailed information about the newly created item. Okay, so let's see how we can create this kind of response. Okay, so this is how creating response using response class. So response class is basically provided by JAX-RS to help you to create a response like that. Okay, so in order to create this kind of response, okay, you can use response.created, and then this is the created URI. So meaning, suppose you were able to build this URI, okay, and that is a URI object, and all you have to do is basically response.created and then provide that URI and then .build. okay, and then that will actually create a response message of this, okay, and will send to the client. So this is it's the same thing that we talked about in previous slide, a common RESTful pattern for creation of new resources to support a post response that returns 201 created status code and the location header whose value is the URI of the newly created resource. Okay, so that's basically what we are talking about. 201 created and the location header. Okay. All right. So that is for using response class. Okay. Creating a response using response class. So this is another way of actually doing things. So in this case, you can create a response in the XML format. Okay. So here you say response.created and URI builder build dummy index. Okay. So this is again creating the URI of this guy. So we are using dummy index just to show we are just creating a second one, in a sense, something like that. And then you are going to use the entity, the user as an entity. So basically, it's going to use user object, and then you'd say type media type XML. That means you are going to generate XML from this user object. Okay, and then you call build method. Then it will generate the response object that contains XML. Another way of creating a response is you can just pass the user object like this. So you can create the user object and then you can return user object. Assuming user class has XML the notation, the JAX-B notation. Okay, and then it will generate the XML. Okay, so let's talk about the exercise 4. So here we're going to talk about both the XML and as well as JSON. Okay, so exercise 4. So here we are going to generate XML, and here we are going to generate XML using JAX-B element. Okay, so that's actually basically what we are talking about in our slide. We say JAX-B class, but it should say JAX-B. The one I actually mentioned was in the beginning. Yeah, so this one I should say JAX-B element rather than JAX-B class. Okay, let me just write that down. Oops. Slide create. Okay, JAX-B element. Okay, so I just wrote that down so I can fix this slide. Okay. And then the third one is generating JSON, and fourth one is generating image file. So when you run response entity provider XML, so let's actually run it. And yeah, this one. Run as install. And run as on server. I'm going to select lastfish. Okay, so here I'm going to see this one. Yeah, you can see it returns XML, and this one also returns XML, but this time we are using entity provider, so two different means. Okay, so let's see the code. Both of them should actually return XML. Okay, so this is the code. So we have two different means. One is this guy and the other one is this. So this is the case that we are generating. We produce this XML, and we are returning response object. So in this case, response object is basically we are going to use the user object, and then we are going to set the type, and then we build and just return the XML object. Okay, so if you now here, if you take a look at the user object, it's actually annotated with the XML root element. Okay, and then the second case is that here we are just returning user object. Okay, because user object is annotated with this. Okay, so this one still should work. Okay, if you actually if you just comment this out and see what happens, whether both of them should work or not. Okay, so so that is actually an exercise. Suppose if you comment this out, okay, and then you're going to see this message that the JAX-B framework doesn't know how to actually convert this guy to the XML. Okay, so this is important. Okay, and yeah, so you get this one, and then so in this case, this is the JAX-B element. So this is the if you take a look at JAX-B element, this is a time that this one should work fine, and we are going to build it and run it, and then we're going to take a look at the code and run it. Okay, so same deal. Both of them should work fine. So now if you take a look at the code, in this case, you can see this one is commented out, okay? But it worked. The reason is because in our case, we are actually generating the JAX-B element. So we say new JAX-B element from a user, and then we actually, the passing JAX-B element. That's the reason it works. So this is another means of actually creating XML when Java object is not XML annotated. So this could be useful when you have a domain class that you got from someone else. You don't have any source code, to change to have this annotation. So you still have to use it. In that case, you can actually use this scheme. So you're going to create a JAX-B element, okay? So basically in this case, what happens is that underneath JAX-B is being used to create the XML, okay? But if you have a resource, if you have an access to Java code of your domain object, then the better way of doing things is actually annotating with it, okay? But there could be some cases, even if it is your code, you cannot change, okay? Because it's being used by somebody else or whatever, okay? All right, 4.3 is now this time we are going to deal with the JSON, okay? So I think no one was actually asking a bunch of JSON questions. So let's see whether this one kind of answers some of your questions. So we do Maven install. And then run it. Okay, so this time the same information is going to be generated in the form of JSON. Okay, so if you take a look at the code, so the coding scheme is pretty much the same, except that the media type we are using is JSON. Okay, so we can actually do either creating a response with, so we actually use the same scheme. We can specify the type, and again, we can produce the JSON with the user. Okay. Again, this case, this is actually something that see whether we can actually try things out. See whether, in this case, if you take a look at the user, this is still annotated with this guy, right? So let's try to comment this out. I don't think I have that exercise. Yeah, so this is for image file. So I'm gonna let you guys to do these things. Okay. So one exercise I want you guys to try to do is comment this out and see whether this still works or not. Okay. And if you can actually share what you found and what your reasoning was, that would be actually good. All right, so right now it's actually 12:20, and so I'm giving you 15 minutes to this exercise, and let's have 30 minutes lunch time. So we will be back 5 minutes after 1 o'clock. Okay.